What would you do if you found a little girl sleeping alone in a freezing playground? No parents. Nowhere to go. One cold-hearted millionaire did, and what happened next changed everything. Could this child be connected to a past he tried to forget? Why did her mother disappear, and what secret could bring a powerful man to his knees? Stick around, this story will stay with you long after it ends. Dear friend, what you're about to experience is not just a story. It's a deeply human journey about lost resilience and the quiet, unexpected ways love finds us when we need it most. If this is your first time here, I invite you to drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing your voice. And if you're someone who believes in second chances and the hidden strength of ordinary people, and in stories that stay with you long after they end, consider subscribing and tapping the bell icon. We share moments that matter. Thank you for being part of this one. Now let's begin. The cold millionaire who had everything, but felt nothing. Have you ever wondered what it's like to have everything yet feel absolutely nothing? On a biting November night in New York City, Alexander Grant, one of the richest men in America, sat alone in the back of his Bentley, idling beside Central Park. The world outside glittered with the holiday season's first frost. But inside the car, the air was sterile, much like his life. At 45, Alexander was a legend in Manhattan real estate. His name topped Forbes lists. His company had reshaped the skyline itself. His net worth north of $3 billion. And yet, as he scrolled through his phone, fielding vapid party invites and hollow congratulations on yet another acquisition, an aching emptiness gnawed at his chest. He had missed his own charity gala that night, canceled it with a one-line email, and doubled the donation instead. Easier to pay than to face human interaction. For Alexander Grant, isolation wasn't an accident. It was a fortress he had built brick by brick after losing his mother at 12, and a father who was there in name only. The harder he worked, the fewer connections he allowed. His penthouse was pristine, his calendar full, his heart long abandoned. Except for Ace, his aging golden retriever, the only soul permitted to breach his inner walls. That night, restless and resentful of the cold, Alexander reluctantly agreed to take Ace on their nightly walk through Central Park. What happened next would unravel his perfectly controlled life. As they crossed a quiet stretch near a deserted playground, Ace suddenly pulled against the leash, whining softly. Annoyed, Alexander followed the dog's determined lead. There, beneath the harsh glow of a single flickering street lamp, he saw her. A little girl no older than 8 curled on the icy sand beneath a rusted slide. Her thin jacket barely covered her shoulders. A threadbare backpack served as a pillow, and yet astonishingly her small fingers clutched a worn photograph against her chest, as if willing it to keep her safe. Alexander's breath caught. He told himself to walk away, to call the police and let them handle it. This wasn't his problem. This couldn't be. But then he heard it, a fragile whisper in the freezing air. The girl stirred and murmured, "Mommy said, just wait, she'll be back." Something inside Alexander cracked. Ace reached her first, nuzzling her with gentle insistence. The girl's eyelids fluttered open. Big brown eyes, weary and wise beyond their years, met his gaze. "I'm sorry, mister," she said, sitting up quickly. "I'm not causing trouble." "Mommy said to stay here." Alexander knelt beside her before realizing he'd even moved. "Where is your mother?" "She went to find work," the girl whispered. "Said she'd come right back 5 days ago. 5 days. Alexander's vision blurred, not from the cold but from an emotion he could not name. He pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her small frame. She shivered, lips, blue eyes wide. But when Ace laid his head in her lap, she smiled, a brief, radiant flash of trust that pierced Alexander's soul. In that moment, surrounded by the sterile wealth of his own life, Alexander Grant, the man who had built an empire without shedding a tear, felt something he hadn't in decades: grief, guilt, and an overwhelming need to protect this child. He called an old friend, Detective Hannah Wells, his voice trembling. "Hannah, I found a child, alone, Central Park. I can't just leave her here." As they waited, the girl Maya, she said, shared her story in quiet, broken sentences. Her mother, Elena Thompson, had been working odd jobs, barely making ends meet. They had been evicted from their last apartment, a building ironically owned by Grant Corp. Elena promised Maya she'd find new work, new hope. She never came back. Alexander sat there in the cold, Maya huddled in his coat, Ace curled beside them. A billionaire surrounded by towering achievements, yet for the first time in years, stripped bare. He had built skyscrapers, demolished competitors, and reshaped the city's future. But what was the point of any of it if a little girl had to sleep alone in a frozen playground beneath one of his own properties? That night, as Detective Wells arrived and took Maya's statement, Alexander made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't walk away. "Detective," he said quietly, lifting Maya into his arms, "for tonight, she's coming with me." As Maya clung to his neck, murmuring, "Thank you," Alexander felt a single tear trace down his cheek. For the first time in decades, Alexander Grant, the coldest man in the city, was learning what it meant to care. And he had no idea that this was just the beginning, because the next revelation would shake him to his core. Detective Hannah Wells arrived at Alexander Grant's penthouse just past midnight, her eyes shadowed with concern. She'd known Alexander since their NYU days, back when he still smiled easily and believed in more than profit margins. But tonight, the man who greeted her at the door looked shaken. Inside, curled on Alexander's vast white leather sofa, Maya slept beneath a thick wool blanket, her tiny frame barely making a dent in the cushions. Ace lay on the floor beside her, protective and watchful. Hannah knelt quietly to check Maya's condition, still weak, exhausted, but breathing steadily now in the warm apartment. "She's been out there 5 nights, Alex," Hannah whispered, straightening. "It's a miracle she's still alive." Alexander raked a hand through his hair. "She said her mother went to find work and never came back." Hannah nodded grimly. "Elena Thompson, I know the name. She brings Maya to the community center sometimes for free meals. Sweet kid, hard-working, but life's been brutal to them." Hearing Elena's name sent a jolt through Alexander's chest, a sharp, unexpected pang. Thompson. The surname was common enough. Yet, something stirred in the far corners of his memory. He couldn't place it, not yet. "Child Services will want to take her in the morning," Hannah continued gently, "but tonight leaving her here is probably the best option. She trusts you." Alexander's gaze drifted back to the sleeping girl. Trust. The word felt heavier than it ever had. After Hannah left, Alexander poured himself a scotch he didn't touch. Instead, he sat in the darkened living room, eyes fixed on the small backpack Maya had clutched so tightly. When curiosity finally overcame hesitation, he unzipped it carefully. Inside lay a battered notebook, a half-empty granola bar, a worn photo of a smiling woman, Elena and Maya, their faces glowing with love. And beneath it all, a yellowed envelope, edges frayed. When Alexander unfolded the letter inside, his heart nearly stopped. Elena Hartman. The name hit him like a thunderclap. Hartman. Not Thompson, Hartman. His mind reeled backward almost 25 years. College, late nights in the library, laughter echoing down dorm hallways. Elena Hartman, his first love. The one he'd walked away from when an internship offer in Manhattan had dangled the future he thought he needed. He had never known she'd been pregnant. His hands trembled. Maya. Could she be? Unable to sit still, he called Sarah Moreno, his most trusted private investigator, even at this hour. "Sarah," he rasped, "I need a full background check on an Elena Hartman, also known as Elena Thompson. I need everything. Now." Sarah, ever unflappable, promised she'd start immediately, but as dawn approached, Alexander knew sleep would not come. When the sun finally crept through the penthouse windows, painting the sterile white walls with gold, Alexander sat beside Maya once more. Her eyes fluttered open slowly. "Good morning," he said softly. She blinked, confused at first, then whispered, "Is Mommy back?" His heart broke anew. "Not yet, but we're trying very hard to find her." Maya nodded solemnly, her small fingers still clutching the photo of her mother. Later that morning, Sarah arrived, files in hand. She wasted no time. Elna Hartman, age 42. Changed her name to Thompson after relocating to New York. No criminal record. No known relatives except an estranged half-sister, Grace Wentworth. Very wealthy, very private. Sarah handed over a recent photo of Elena. Though thinner now, lines of hardship etched around her mouth, her eyes were unmistakable. Sarah hesitated before adding, "She's been applying for jobs all over the city desperately, including your company." The irony struck Alexander hard. She was last seen 5 days ago. Sarah continued working as a temporary cleaner at one of your construction sites. There was an accident, shelving collapsed. She's currently in a coma at Mount Sinai Hospital, admitted as a Jane Doe. A shudder ran through Alexander. His empire, the very machine he'd spent decades building, had failed this woman and her child. And then came the final blow. "I pulled birth records," Sarah said quietly. "Maya's birth certificate lists no father, but the timeline matches almost perfectly." Alexander sat in stunned silence, the weight of the truth pressing down with unbearable force. Could he have been a father all these years? Without knowing, his chest tightened painfully. All the empty years. All the choices made in pursuit of power. Had they cost him more than he could bear? That afternoon, unable to ignore the need within him, Alexander walked into Maya's room, where she sat drawing at the small table, Ace faithfully guarding her. He knelt beside her. "Maya," he said gently, "would you like to visit your mom?" Her eyes lit up instantly. "Can we?" "We can," he promised. Mount Sinai loomed large and impersonal as they entered, but Maya clung to his hand with trust that shattered his carefully built defenses. In the ICU, amidst the machines and hushed voices, Elena lay pale and still. Maya gasped softly, her small body trembling. "Mommy." Alexander lifted her onto the bed carefully. Maya pressed her cheek to Elena's arm. "I waited, Mommy. I waited, like you said," she whispered, tears slipping down her face. "Please, wake up." Alexander turned away, overcome. Later, as Maya slept against Elena's side, Alexander spoke softly to the unconscious woman. "I never knew," he said, voice-breaking. "But I know now, and I swear to you I won't abandon her. Or you." That night, long after bringing Maya home, Alexander stood alone by the massive windows of his penthouse. He had once believed life was about skyscrapers, acquisitions, and status. But now a child's fragile trust and a mother's unspoken plea had changed everything. He could no longer ignore the past. And for the first time, Alexander Grant didn't know what would come next. But he knew this: whatever the cost, he would fight for Maya. And for Elena. Because some things were worth more than everything he had ever built. The days that followed became a blur of phone calls, hospital visits, and a growing weight of responsibility that Alexander Grant could no longer deny. Each morning began the same way. Maya would wake in Alexander's penthouse, and after a quiet breakfast, ask the same question in her small voice. "Can we see Mommy today?" And each time Alexander would nod, taking her small hand in his and leading her into the bustling halls of Mount Sinai. Elena remained in a coma, her face pale against the sterile white sheets. Maya would talk to her drawing pictures and reading her simple stories, while Alexander sat nearby, silently tormented by regret. He had once believed that wealth could insulate him from the messiness of human emotion. Now, faced with the fragile figure of the woman he had once loved and the daughter he never knew he had, Alexander realized just how hollow that belief had been. One afternoon, as Alexander watched Maya color another picture of their small family, a house, a dog, a mother, a father, Sarah Moreno arrived with a grim expression. "We have more information," she said, handing over a folder. "And you need to see this." In his office later, Alexander opened the file with trembling hands. "Elena didn't just happen to end up at your construction site," Sarah explained. "She applied for jobs at Grant Corporation 6 times in the past 4 years. Each time she was rejected on paper, an underqualified single mother with a spotty employment record. HR algorithms flagged her automatically." Alexander felt a surge of nausea. "I never knew." Sarah gave him a pointed look. "That's the problem. The system you built made sure you wouldn't know," she continued. "The site where she was working, Midtown Development Project Aurora. There were already reports of safety violations. The contractor fast-tracked deadlines to meet your quarterly earnings targets." Alexander's blood ran cold. "That project. It's one of your flagship properties," Sarah said quietly, "and the same contractor responsible for multiple past violations." For a long moment, Alexander couldn't breathe. The empire he had spent his life building its foundations were now cracking under the weight of human cost. The human cost was Elena and Maya. Sarah hesitated. "There's one more thing." She slid over a document. "I obtained Maya's birth certificate and hospital records. The dates align. She was born 8.5 months after you and Elena ended." Alexander traced a trembling finger over the certificate. No father listed, no legal ties. But the truth stared back at him as plainly as if it had been carved in stone. "She's my daughter," he whispered. Sarah placed a hand on his arm. "You need to be ready. If this goes public, the press will come after you. Your competitors will use this. And there's one more complication." Alexander looked up, his throat dry. "Elena's half-sister, Grace Wentworth. She's already filed a motion for emergency custody of Maya. She claims you're an unfit guardian, and that Elena's history proves instability." The words landed like a physical blow. "She can't," Alexander said, voice hoarse. "She can," Sarah replied. "She's wealthy, influential, and already rallying media support. You have a battle ahead." That evening, Alexander found himself standing by Elena's hospital bed once more. Maya was asleep in the adjoining chair, her head resting against Ace's soft fur. "I failed you," Alexander whispered to Elena. "I failed both of you, but I swear I will not fail again." The following days became a whirlwind of legal meetings and strategy sessions. Alexander's high-powered attorneys prepared for the custody battle, while PR advisors urged him to issue a carefully crafted statement. Instead, Alexander chose a different path. In a press conference broadcast live, he stood before the cameras, raw and unguarded. "I am Alexander Grant," he began, "and until recently I believed success meant standing alone. But now I know true success is measured not in buildings but in the lives we touch." He spoke openly of Elena, of Maya, of his failures. He pledged sweeping reforms across Grant Corporation higher safety standards, transparent hiring practices, and the creation of the Thompson Initiative named for Elena to support struggling families displaced by gentrification. The media storm was relentless, but public opinion shifted as many saw sincerity in his words. Yet the legal battle loomed. In court, Grace Wentworth's attorneys painted a damning picture Alexander as a ruthless mogul incapable of nurturing a child. Elena's struggles were twisted into evidence of unfitness. Maya, overhearing whispers outside the courtroom, turned tearful eyes to Alexander. "Are they going to take me away?" His heart shattered. Kneeling before her, he took her small hands. "I won't let that happen, Maya, no matter what." The most harrowing moment came when Maya called to speak, addressed the judge in her soft, trembling voice. "He came for me," she said simply, "when no one else did. I was alone and he made me safe. I don't want to lose him." Tears filled the courtroom. Even Grace's gaze faltered. But the battle was not yet over. During a recess, Alexander's lead attorney approached with a grim expression. "New evidence has surfaced," she said. "Emails from your former COO. He leaked documents showing you personally approved the contractor's accelerated timeline, knowing it risked safety." Alexander reeled. Betrayed from within, the press pounced. Stock prices tumbled. In a desperate press conference that night, Alexander addressed the public once more. "I take full responsibility. I was blinded by ambition. But that ends now. I will rebuild not just my company, but the trust we've lost. Starting with the life that matters most, my daughter's." That night, alone in the penthouse, Alexander gazed at the skyline that had once been his pride. Now it felt like a hollow monument to empty victories. Yet, when he turned, he saw Maya asleep in her room, clutching a worn photo of her mother. And he understood some battles were worth any cost, even if it meant losing everything else. The weeks that followed tested Alexander Grant in ways he had never imagined. The man who once moved billion-dollar deals with a single word now found himself powerless before a judge's gavel, a relentless media storm, and his own long-buried regrets. This wasn't about corporate strategy anymore. It was about family, about love, about becoming the man Maya and Elena deserved. At the heart of it all was the fight for custody. Grace Wentworth, with her polished charm and well-funded legal team, had pulled every string available. In court filings, she portrayed Alexander as an unfeeling billionaire whose recent change of heart was a PR stunt. She painted Elena as a reckless mother whose desperation had endangered her child. And worst of all, she positioned herself as Maya's only stable guardian. Alexander refused to match Grace's tactics with cold legal maneuvers. He wanted the truth to speak for itself. But his attorneys warned him sincerity alone wouldn't win a custody case against Grace's resources. So Alexander took action where he could. He doubled down on his public reforms, transforming Grant Corporation in tangible ways. He mandated third-party safety inspections across all projects, instituted living wages, and personally met with displaced families his developments had impacted. At the same time, he established the Thompson Initiative, offering housing job training and scholarships for single parents in crisis. The press remained skeptical. Commentators questioned his motives. But within communities that had long felt invisible, word spread. Alexander Grant was listening and acting. At Mount Sinai, Elena remained in a fragile state. Though still unconscious, her doctors noted increased brain activity, particularly during Maya's visits. Each afternoon, after tutoring and therapy sessions designed to help her process the trauma, Maya would climb onto the hospital bed, hold her mother's hand, and talk about her day. One rainy evening, as Maya sat beside her mother reading a picture book, Alexander lingered at the doorway, heart aching. Sarah Moreno approached quietly. "She's fighting, Alex," Sarah said. "But you need to prepare yourself. The custody hearing is next week, and Grace is pushing hard." Alexander exhaled slowly. I know. You're doing everything you can, Sarah added. But this isn't just about you anymore. It's about Maya's future. Alexander nodded. In his office late that night, he reviewed the list of recent reforms. But as he looked over spreadsheets and reports, it struck him no amount of corporate change could erase the pain caused by past neglect. What mattered now was being present fully for the people who needed him most. The following morning, he met with his legal team. I want to testify, he said firmly. His lead attorney frowned. Alex, you'll be cross-examined mercilessly. Grace's team will drag up every ruthless deal you've ever made. Let them, Alexander replied. I won't hide from my past. If I expect Maya to trust me, she needs to see me face the truth. The day of the hearing arrived under gray skies. Outside the courthouse, protesters gathered, some condemning Alexander, others supporting his reforms. News vans lined the street cameras trained on every movement. Inside the courtroom, Alexander sat beside his attorneys, hands clenched. Maya, seated nearby with Sarah, gave him a small, brave smile. When called to the stand, Alexander rose and faced the judge, a stern woman with decades of family law experience. I've built a fortune, Alexander began, but in doing so, I lost sight of what truly matters. I never knew I had a daughter. I failed Elena. I failed Maya. But since finding them, I've realized that wealth means nothing without love, without responsibility. He described the reforms he had enacted not as penance, but as a promise to build a better future. He spoke of Maya's resilience, her courage, and the bond they had formed. And if this court allows me, he concluded, voice trembling, I will spend the rest of my life proving worthy of being her father. Cross-examination was brutal. Grace's attorney highlighted every ruthless acquisition, every cold business decision Alexander had ever made. They painted him as a man incapable of empathy, but Alexander held his ground. I can't change who I was, he admitted, but I can choose who I am now. And every choice I make will be for Maya's well-being. Then came the moment that broke the courtroom's composure. Maya, called to speak, walked to the front with trembling legs. Taking a deep breath, she looked at the judge. When I was alone in the park, I was really scared, she began softly. But Mr. Grant, my dad, found me. He kept me safe. He listens to me. He reads to Mommy. I know he loves us. Tears streamed down Grace's face. Even the judge's eyes glistened. As proceedings continued, a new twist emerged. Elena's vital signs had stabilized. Doctors anticipated she might awaken soon. The judge, recognizing the pending change in circumstances, delayed her ruling, allowing time for Elena's recovery. In the days that followed, Alexander balanced legal strategy with bedside vigils. One quiet morning, as sunlight filtered through the hospital window, Elena's fingers twitched. Alexander leaned forward. Elena. Her eyelids fluttered open. Confusion gave way to recognition. Alex, relief and grief mingled in his voice. You're safe. Maya's safe. Tears filled Elena's eyes. Where is she? In the playroom. I'll bring her. Moments later, Maya burst into the room. Mommy! She cried, throwing her arms around her mother. Elena wept, clutching her daughter. Alexander watched emotion overwhelming him. When Maya finally slept, curled beside her mother, Elena looked at Alexander. You've changed, she whispered. I had to, he replied. For her, for you. In the weeks that followed, as Elena regained strength, the legal battle took a new shape. Grace, seeing the renewed family bond and facing public backlash, withdrew her motion. The judge issued her ruling joint custody, with Maya remaining primarily with Elena, and Alexander granted full visitation and parental rights. Outside the courthouse, Alexander knelt before Maya. We did it, he said softly. Maya hugged him tightly. I knew you would. The fight had cost Alexander dearly. Stock prices remained volatile. Some board members demanded his resignation. But to Alexander, none of that mattered. He had fought the battle of a lifetime. And in doing so, he had found something no amount of money could buy: redemption and a family to fight for. 1 year later, the air in Central Park felt different. The same chill hung in the early spring breeze, but there was warmth now, soft laughter, joyful shouts, the bright colors of new playground equipment catching the golden light of sunset. Where once rusted swings creaked in solitude, children now ran free, their sneakers kicking up clouds of wood chips underfoot. At the center of it all stood Alexander Grant, watching with quiet awe as Maya raced across the playground, her braids flying behind her ace, loping faithfully a few steps behind. It was the same playground where he had first found her cold and alone beneath a broken slide. But now it had a new name: Hope Park, and a brass plaque at its entrance that read, "In honor of the children who wait and the parents who come home." Rebuilding that park had been Alexander's first act after the court's ruling. He didn't just donate money, he personally oversaw every detail, from the safety inspections to the mural painted by local artists featuring scenes of unity, resilience, and family. The mural included a soft image of a woman holding a child beneath a tree, with a golden dog by their side. Elena had cried the first time she saw it. Today was special. Not just because it marked a year since the night everything changed, but because it was the first community gathering hosted by the Thompson Initiative. Dozens of families had come, many who had once been homeless or lost to the system, now housed and supported through the foundation. Elena stood near the refreshment table, smiling as she spoke with a group of mothers. Her health had fully returned, her eyes brighter, her voice stronger. The weight of the past still lingered in her expression at times, but she carried it with grace. Alexander approached her with 2 cups of warm cider. She took one, their hands brushing, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "Can you believe it?" she whispered. He smiled. "I still wake up sometimes thinking I imagined it all." She laughed softly. And yet, here we are. They sipped cider, watching as Maya helped a younger child climb the monkey bars. "She's grown so much," Elena said. "She's softer now, braver." Alexander nodded. "Because she's no longer waiting for someone to come back. She knows she's surrounded by people who'll never leave." Elena glanced at him. "Including you." He met her gaze. Always. It hadn't been an easy road. After the custody case, Alexander faced a near mutiny at Grant Corporation. Stockholders panicked, media narratives shifted weekly, and critics questioned his leadership. But Alexander didn't run. He stayed, reshaped the board, installed ethics committees, and turned down projects that didn't align with his new values, even when it cost millions. Slowly, the company stabilized. More importantly, it began to earn trust. Internally, Alexander had changed too. The man who once refused to attend his own galas now spent weekends volunteering at shelters, playing chess with the teens, mentoring young entrepreneurs. He no longer measured success in square footage or net growth, but in how many lives were better because he showed up. Elena had begun teaching again literacy programs for single mothers, some of whom had never finished high school. Her experience gave her a voice others trusted. Her presence offered hope. As the sun dipped lower, the crowd began to gather near the newly built amphitheater at the edge of the park. A small stage had been set up and a microphone waited. Alexander took a deep breath, stepped forward, and addressed the group. "Exactly 1 year ago, I walked through this park as a man who thought he had everything. I passed by a child asleep in the cold, and for the first time in my life I stopped. That moment changed everything." He paused, glancing at Maya and Elena, who stood near the edge of the stage. "Since that night, I've learned that success means nothing without purpose. That strength isn't in the deals we close, but in the hands we hold. and that sometimes the most powerful transformation doesn't come from wealth but from love. Applause rose warm and genuine. When he stepped down, Maya ran to him and threw her arms around his waist. "Dad, that was the best speech ever." He laughed, lifting her into his arms. "You're the best part of my story." Later, as the crowd dispersed and evening settled in, Alexander took Elena's hand. "There's something I've been meaning to do." She tilted her head, smiling. "Oh." He led her to the same bench where they had once sat beside Maya's sleeping body the very night they had reconnected after decades apart. The park was quiet, now bathed in golden twilight. He knelt. "Elena Thompson. No, Elena Hartman, will you marry me?" Her breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes. "You're serious," she whispered. "I've never been more certain." She nodded, laughter and tears mingling. "Yes, of course, yes." From behind them, Maya's voice rang out, "Can I be the flower girl?" They turned laughing as she ran to join them, Ace close behind. That night, as the family walked home beneath the stars, hand in hand, Alexander looked up at the skyline he had once worshipped. It still sparkled, still stood tall, but now it no longer represented conquest. It represented community, responsibility, love. He had built towers of glass and steel, but it was in the quiet rebuilding of a broken life, his own, that he found meaning. He had once been the man who had everything but felt nothing. Now, with his daughter's hand in one and the woman he loved in the other, he finally had what mattered most. And in the heart of the city that had once hardened him, hope bloomed again. Not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in laughter and forgiveness, and in the promise of new beginnings. Alexander Grant's story is not just about a powerful man discovering he has a daughter. It is a profound journey of redemption, love, and the courage to face one's past. In the span of a year, we witnessed the transformation of a man who had once believed that wealth, status, and control defined a life well lived. A man so isolated by success that he forgot the simple power of connection. Yet, one cold night in Central Park, a little girl asleep in a forgotten playground shattered that illusion. That moment, unexpected, inconvenient, and deeply human, became the catalyst for everything that followed. Through Maya's innocence and Elena's unwavering strength, Alexander was forced to confront not only his failures as a businessman, but as a human being. He learned that true leadership is not about towering skyscrapers or billion-dollar deals, but about accountability, compassion, and the willingness to change. He faced public scrutiny, legal battles, and personal shame, all while discovering what it truly means to love and to be loved. This story reminds us that no one is beyond redemption. The walls we build to protect ourselves can just as easily become prisons. It took the innocence of a child and the quiet resilience of a mother to show Alexander that vulnerability is not weakness, and that the richest life is one filled with purpose and connection, not possessions. As we reflect on Alexander's journey, there are powerful lessons we can apply to our own lives. First, never underestimate the impact a single act of compassion can have. One moment of kindness can alter the course of another person's life and your own. Second, be willing to face your mistakes. Growth comes not from denying the past, but from owning it and striving to do better. Lastly, remember that love, patience, and forgiveness are far more valuable than status or wealth. Relationships require nurturing humility and a willingness to show up even when it's hard. In today's fast-paced, success-driven world, it is easy to lose sight of what truly matters. We often chase achievements while neglecting the people who need us most. Let Alexander's story serve as a reminder: slow down. Look around, be present, and never be afraid to rebuild not just your career or your image, but your heart. If this story moved you, If it reminded you of the power of compassion and the importance of second chances, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Your support encourages us to continue sharing these heartfelt, inspiring stories with you. And, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching. Together, let's keep building a world where kindness leads the way.